what drew you to this particular adventure and the adventure of going off the beaten path in general?
So for me, I think I've started with the goal in mind to always feel maybe just a little bit crazy about what the goal was. After my Staten Island swim in 2023, I did kind of want to do Lake Norman. And so Alex had even asked me, like, when are we going to do Lake Norman? Because I had mentioned it over drinks one night. And he was like, whoa, this is so cool. Look at all the branches. Like, I have no idea how we're going to navigate that, but let's figure it out. Right.
Hello, and welcome to the Ultraswimming podcast, where we have conversations about swimming long distances across wild, open bodies of water with little more than a textile swimsuit, cap, and goggles. I'm Jessica Kiris, co-hosting the podcast with Evan Morrison. Evan, can you tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Yeah, we're very lucky today to have a very accomplished ultra swimmer join us, Leslie Hamilton from New York City. Leslie, this past October, became the first documented swimmer to complete the full length of Lake Norman, which is a 26 and a half mile swim, 42K. She was a finalist for the MSF Udavin Award for Most Adventurous Swim this past year. Before that, she also became the first woman to complete a circumnavigation of Staten Island in New York, and actually only the second ever. There was a lifeguard back in 1979 who completed the swim. Leslie's also completed a number of impressive swims, including the length of Lake Tahoe, the length of Lake Memphremagog, around Manhattan, 20 bridges a couple of times. In 2022, she completed all 4 stages of SCAR and all 7 stages of 8 bridges. Pretty big year there.
Yeah, so you've participated in a lot of these events, and I thought it might be good to talk a little bit about your experiences starting out in big events and then transitioning to solo swims.
Yeah, I actually think it was pretty natural or just a natural progression for me. I really was kind of like born and raised by New York Open Water. I started out doing their current assisted 10K Spite and Dival in 2017, wearing a wetsuit. Stupid, stupid me. It was very hot. But despite that, I was like, hey, this is fun. I bet I can go longer. Like, let's just see what happens. Showed back up again in 2018, did a couple of swims by the Verrazano Bridge with Sibos as well. And then by 2019, I was like, hey, the 8 bridges stages look really fun. It's still a really nice little pod. Everybody fits on one boat. You really get to know everyone. So in 2019, I got to do stage 3 and stage 6 back to back, which was a great experience. And then from there, I just kind of kept growing up in the organization between 20 bridges and then doing all 7 stages of 8 bridges in 2022, like you touched on. And from there, I just kind of knew that, like, I mean, New York Open Water was my training wheels for this, right?
You said that you grew up in New York open water. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about, like, why do you feel like you grew up with them? Like, it sounds like a family.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. I mean, in terms of the scope of how many swimmers they serve, it's, I mean, it's huge, right? It's people come from all over the world to do 20 bridges. Yeah, I mean, Rondi, David, and Alex are just superstars. I'm really lucky that I've gotten to know them, and I really just, as soon as I kind of fell in love with open water swimming here in New York, I just tried to involve myself and insert myself into as many races or just kind of ideas. Like during the pandemic, I went and visited Rondi upstate a couple times. We did some nice little ad hoc swims.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I
It
think like we grew together a little bit in the pandemic because I was one of the ones that was fortunate enough to do the 20 bridges swim in 2020. So that was really, really wonderful. I had an August date, like a later August date, and then they canceled the whole thing in 2020. Then in June, they were like, hey, we're still going to do a couple if you're interested. And by that point, I had observed a few times on boats as well, which has been just such valuable experience. You get to see so many different swimmers and kind of what their methods are and how they prepare for swims and just kind of their strategy and just everything about how they carry themselves during swims. And I mean, I've been on a boat around Manhattan countless times, including for like a 40 bridges as well. I've been on an Ederly boat. Like I've definitely seen a lot of it from within the water and also on the other side.
You mentioned Rondi, Alex, and David have all been supportive to you as a new, like as you entered the organization. But then after that, you were able to participate as like supporting other people or giving back. And maybe that's why it has that family feel to it. I was reading your documentation for the Staten Island swim, which I know was organized and observed and ratified by New York Open Water, but we were lucky enough to also have that documentation, and Evan published it on the MSF website as well. So I was reading through it, and I loved what Rondi wrote about her process in planning and organizing the swim, and thinking about the tides and the boat graveyard and the just all the different factors that had to line up, and basically and it had to be on a Sunday and the tides had to be doing this. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what it was like to work with them specifically on that swim.
I had heard rumblings that this was something that they had thought about doing, and that there had been kayaks that had gone around Staten Island, and that it was an interesting swim, but had a lot of factors that could be pretty unpredictable and hard to plan, including not only currents, but then shipping traffic, and that there's really only like a couple Sundays a year that it really would work as far as like getting it together. Sunday because it's nice and not as crowded marine wise, but then also currents, finding the current pattern in a warmer month on a Sunday really limits you, right? So I guess like in being privy to kind of watching them help me plan, and of course I had to put in some input about speed and just, overall conditions. I mean, by that point I felt pretty comfortable swimming at any kind of condition at night, storms, rain, sun, whatever is going to be thrown at me was fine. But I also, for a while there, they really weren't sure about currents. We thought it could be up to like a 20-hour swim. The model was revised down to 14 and a half, like pretty later on. And I was, pleasantly surprised, but also maybe a little bit disappointed because I was like ready to do something longer. But overall, I just really I wanted to try it. It was the water that I feel like I've grown up in, and the organization that I really got to grow up with in a sense. And so it was really good to see that firsthand of everything that goes into contemplating something that's never been done before.
Yeah, there's a nice section in the documentation about it. So I'm just going to read actually what Rondi Davies put in the documentation for the swim. It says the Staten Island swim has been on NYOW's radar since 2014. In October 2015, starting at South Beach, 4 of us kayaked clockwise around the island as reconnaissance to see how doable the swim appeared in terms of distance, current assist, and water quality. The kayaking trip took over 12 hours, in which time we experienced plenty of wind, chop, and commercial activity. From this, we learned the swim was doable, but it would take a fast and highly adventurous swimmer that was up to the challenge. Step in Leslie Hamilton. Leslie had asked us to help her do the swim in 2022, but it was pushed to 2023. Leslie came to the swim well prepared, in top physical and mental condition, and with a fierce determination to get it done.
So one other notable aspect of the Staten Island swim that you did is that it had a pretty significant appearance in the mainstream media. You were featured in an article in the New Yorker by Daniel Shaler, which was honestly one of my favorite things I've ever read in the media about marathon swimming. So can you speak to how that came about?
Yeah, I met Dan up at the Inwood Canoe Club with Alex. I had plans to catch up with Alex, and I was going to go for a quick little dip in the Hudson, and then we were going to go to a bar and hang out. And he was like, "Oh, can my friend Dan come?" And so that's where I met Dan, and we were just talking. And he was like, "Oh, I'm a reporter," and I was telling him about some of the stuff I've done, and it came up, and he said, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool!" Like he is also a little bit of a crazy swimmer himself, and I think as a freelance journalist covers a wide range of pretty interesting topics. Just from the stuff I've read, it feels like he's always traveling around. But yeah, so we stayed in touch, and then he did an interview before I did the swim, and he ended up being on that second support boat that zoomed in during the day. And so he got a lot of good pictures. He got a lot of really good dialogue. That was like right in the part where it was kind of around the tip of Staten Island. I was actually sort of at my grumpiest at that point, but I remember seeing them and being happy that he was there, and just new faces to come and support. So I was really happy he could tag along, and he did miss the part where I flashed everybody, but I talked about it at the end, so it made the article. It's also like right around the time I was looking for a new job. So if any employers were going to look me up, I guess they were going to see the headline, which was tits out under the Verrazano. So really had that going well for me there too.
I was going to ask you about that. So that seemed like for people listening, maybe you can in a second you can tell a little bit about why you decided to swim topless for part of the swim, but it seemed like a very pragmatic decision, and yet it's also seemed like you approached it with a lot of levity, like you kind of made it a fun thing. I'm not sure if that was just how you wrote about it in the narrative or if that was really how you experienced it. But I thought it might be good to tell our listeners a little bit about why you decided to do that and maybe why it was a pragmatic decision, at least at first.
Yeah, I think the reason, because I actually do think I approached it with a lot of levity in the actual event. And I think the reason for that was that I was just so relieved. Right. I was looking back at my training journals too, and I had noticed like a couple weeks before the swim, the water at the battery was pretty cold. It was like around 62, which for mid-June, I guess is like still on the cool side. But anyway, I noticed that and I'm like, oh, it's kind of chilly, like comparatively to what it is. But it warmed up fast. It warmed up really quickly within 2 weeks, and it was around 80 when I started. And so the problem with that becomes then your jellyfish are breeding and you get your jellyfish larvae and then you get the sea lice. And this was not something that I had really expected to happen or had thought would be a factor at all. Like I swam around Manhattan and I got a little bit of sea lice. It was a hotter month, so it's to be expected if you wear a one piece, it just gets stuck in your suit, right? And the other funny part is I feel like I usually do bring a second swimsuit for a solo swim on a boat. And I used to kind of make fun of it. Like, at what point am I actually going to need that second swimsuit? Like, this is it going to like fall off of my body? Like, why did I pack this to begin with? But here I am, and I brought a bikini too because I was like, oh, but maybe the sea lice might be bad. Like, it was just an afterthought. I was freaking out about the pollution. I was freaking out about the shipping traffic. I was freaking out about getting like, I don't know, like, like tetanus shots and stuff, but I wasn't thinking about like, you know, that being something that could actually derail it. So I remember the first hour, I think it was pretty bad, but I kept on just being like, oh, it's just a little sea lice. Like, it'll go away. It'll be fine. Like, I'll get us to the channel and it'll be good. And then when I realized it wasn't going to stop, I'm like, okay, well, at this point now I have to think about like, what options do I have? And yeah, I mean, the option that made the most sense to me was just to like strip it off. I told them like before one of the feeds that I needed it ready. And then I was like, but it's dark. I may as well just wear the bottoms. Like, I don't need the top right now. It's going to be more comfortable. And pretty much as soon as I put on just the bottoms, I felt great. I think my body was tensing up because of how many sea lice there were, and I just didn't even realize it. And I can actually say that that part of the swim was like still some of my favorite swimming memory of all time. Swimming topless through the Narrows, a place that I'm pretty familiar with. It was just dead silent at night. And then funnily enough, we saw one ship coming in through the Verrazano. It was actually the cruise ship that Jan and I would later go on our honeymoon on, which is wild, like has to be a sign, right? Um, and yeah, just in the middle of the night, there's nothing else. It's flat. I'm in a great mood. I kind of think I thought about it like about an hour before I got to the bridge, and I'm like, maybe I should flip over and do backstroke over the bridge and flash everybody. I was like thinking about it for a while, like, should I do it? Like I went back and forth in my head. I did it, and then the boat missed it, but Alex saw it. Alex and Terry both got to see it, so it was worth it. Um,
Yeah, you
yeah,
really
it
made the
was,
best of it and had fun with it. So
yeah,
it's just kind
yeah.
of an interesting commentary because, it's like as women, I think sometimes we get in these situations where we're sacrificing comfort or we're sacrificing, what makes sense logistically in terms of being modest or being, what other people think we should be doing. Or people really lean into it and do things to shock people. But this was a cool balance of like clearly this was definitely the right decision to save the swim and also just save your enjoyment of the swim. And also you were like, let's do this, like I appreciated that.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know, like I'm here. I was gonna grind it out regardless, so why not make it fun?
So Leslie, you alluded to some worries about pollution. 'Cause I don't really know that part of New York well. Are there in general more concerns going around Staten Island than going around Manhattan?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. So it's really the western area. So it's like between like the water between Staten Island and New Jersey.
Hmm.
And that part, so that's the Arthur Kill, and there are quite a few like plants, like I mean, pardon my miseducation, I'm not actually sure like what it is, like factories, industrial stuff, and that's known for just not being great water quality wise. There's also a lot of like there's an entire place that's basically called like the ship graveyard, and it's a bunch of sunken ships, and I'm sure that stuff sitting in the water and corroding and being all disgusting probably doesn't help it either. But from what I'm able to tell, and like surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, like there's of course like no swim advisories around those areas. But then to find like more like micro data, I'm not enough of a scientist to completely understand it because I remember I was panic searching about it. Sean, the captain, who is more familiar with the water around there, was saying, like, have you thought about pollution as a factor? And it's like, of course we think about pollution as a factor, and we live in New York, but it definitely had me second guessing. And people will say things, right? I mean, just to kind of, I don't know, be annoying or talk about like the radioactiveness or, the third arm that I'm going to grow someday or whatever. But it was interesting. So I actually ended up doing a little scouting trip before, and I went, and this organization called NYCH2O did a little like walking tour of these wind power plants that they want to install actually over like in that area in the Arthur Kill, which I found to be really fascinating. So I guess kind of hope for maybe kind of more cleaner renewable energy. So maybe that'll also like take steps to improve. And then overall, I spoke with, she was quoted in the New York article as well, my friend Paula Croxton. She is a scientist, so she kind of helped me decode a little bit more of what was going on there. And I mean, she said it, and I agree. I think it's like I'm not trying to drink the water, and I'm not swimming there every day. So while it's maybe not the cleanest place to swim, is it, you know, gonna be super dangerous? Probably not. I don't think we'd want like novice swimmers to go in there and accidentally swallow a bunch of shit and then feel sick. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's something that New York is always watching, but I think it can be a little bit over dramatized.
Did you have any symptoms afterwards from
No, I was fine.
pollution?
I mean,
Good.
the sea lice really had me down. I was like taking baths in vinegar. I can't remember if I attached to my documentation the actual picture. Maybe I didn't because it was gross. I haven't shared that one yet. But yeah, it was bad. It was hundreds.
And do you think do you anticipate there will be much interest in other swimmers going around Staten Island? Have you heard anything, or would you recommend it?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. I guess it could be an option, but I also think the amount of planning and everything that happened makes me think that it'd be a long time before, or maybe if for some reason tides just inordinately cooperate one year, but I have no idea if they're monitoring it or what the situation might be in the future. But hey, it's always great to get out there. So I hope maybe someday somebody does it again.
I think it's a little like in our last episode we were talking with Karina Garcia about her swim from Santa Rosa Island to the California mainland and talking about how Santa Rosa Island is pretty unknown outside of that specific area. If you're a local, you know it, but it's not well known outside of Santa Barbara and Ventura County, maybe at the most. So it could be that Staten Island is just it's a swim that's out there that we now know more about thanks to you doing it, and that maybe some local who has a history or personal connection with Staten Island will have a little more information on their hands if they attempt to do it, but perhaps not something that will ever be as popular as swimming around Manhattan.
Don't think that's ever going to be the case. Think it'd be impossible to do a mass start. That would be chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe some one-offs. Can't really speak for them, but just from the knowledge I have of how hard that was, I think that's going to be a tall order
Or just somebody looking for a very unusual adventure.
for sure. For the same reason I did. So
So when you think of adventure, what do you think of? What are the elements of an adventure from your perspective?
I don't want to sound corny, but I feel like I'll know it when I see it. I think sometimes there's the personal aspect of it, like Lake Norman being in my hometown, Staten Island being an area that I'm relatively familiar with, and I just love New York waterways. I love, I don't know, a little bit of a tangent. I always loved to listen to like the Hamilton soundtrack while I'm training for like New York specific swims. I guess I share a name with him and I feel like I relate to him. But then you just think about like historically like how much has happened there, and it's just such a cool place to be able to call like this is my turf that I get to swim in. But anyway, I think that was a big reason for Staten Island. For Lake Norman, I was like, well, I lived in Charlotte. I grew up there. I had a great time. I'm never moving back. But seeing how complicated it was even a bigger draw maybe than the fact that it was hometown. I mean, logistically, that does make it easier. And then overall, I think for me, the big adventures have so far been stage swims. I'd love to do 8 bridges again if they ever hold it again. I think when it comes down to that, the multi-day aspect of it and the fact that you can really kind of explore an area in such detail while also pushing yourself to the absolute limit and while knowing that logistics play so much of a role in it, I think that's so much fun. As far as other like longer solo swims, I mean, there's plenty of wonderful places that are like super historic. Like, I mean, the English Channel, people will want to do that for the same reason. I mean, maybe not the scenery, but like, I don't know. I think I touched on it a little bit. For me, like, I haven't been super inspired to do those types of swims because it's not the adventure that I currently have in mind at the moment. But I think it usually just comes to me, and I would encourage people to just think outside the box a little bit. I think pretty much on all of the swims that I've done, I mean, the 2 swims that I've done that have been super weird, I was very scared of. And for the stuff I have planned for future seasons, I'm still very scared of some of those swims, but I think that's, part of the why. And I think it's really cool to see what people will dream up next.
Yeah, so maybe any swim can be an adventure to the right person. And I like what you said. I didn't think it was corny. Like, you'll know when you see it because it's very individual. What one person's adventure might be someone else's, I feel like I have to do this, but, vice versa.
Right. I guess it's just like one dumb idea can lead to all of this.
I think people obviously sign up for swims or plan swims for their own reason, but it's kind of interesting to see what those reasons are. Some reasons are internally generated and some reasons are kind of externally generated. Like I think you know it when you see it, right? A personal connection with a place or something rather than, oh, I've done 3 of the Ocean's 7 swims, and so now I need to do these other 4. And I think so much activity in the marathon swimming world now is kind of like externally generated reasons. And so I really appreciate talking about things that come from some very specific personal place.
So you've repeated a lot of swims, actually. I think you've done Scar twice. You're about to go do Scar again, and some other swims too. Do you feel like you're having a repetitive experience when you do this, or do you feel like it's different the second time? Why repeat a swim?
Yeah, so I actually don't really feel that way at all. And I think a lot of the times I'll repeat a swim if it taught me something about myself. It's always interesting to repeat because it is usually completely different. I can think of, like, I know for Scar, for me, the first year there, I was totally not the experienced swimmer I am now. When I did it in 2021, I was in a lot of ways probably not really as prepared or really knowing what to expect, although it's hard to know what to expect in those kinds of conditions when everything changes and you're so mobile. But I think after coming at it in 2021, less experienced, then doing it in 2022 and really feeling great about kind of like leaving like nothing, no questions to be asked. I ended up DNFing the Apache swim because I had hurt my wrist the day before in 2021, and so from SCUR to SCAR, I was pretty happy I could turn it around in a year. And just thinking about like in 2022, even I was not the swimmer that I am now, and that's part of the reason I want to do it again. I want to see like what other kind of adventure will it lead to. We had like a random monsoon at Saguaro the first year, and the second year it was super calm, or
Yeah,
it's just
it's like
it's
you
same but
can't
different.
Yeah, you can't step in the same river twice, and it's like you can't actually do the same swim twice because it's going to be different the second time or the third time.
Yeah.
Now a moment ago, I think you were saying that, having had this experience with growing up in New York open water and then swimming around Staten Island, you were ready. You had seen how the organization of a big swim goes. What drew you to this particular adventure and the adventure of going off the beaten path in general?
So for me, I think I've started with the goal in mind to always feel maybe just a little bit crazy about what the goal was. I think so actually in after my Staten Island swim in 2023, I did kind of want to do Lake Norman, but I ended up deciding that I didn't want to because I wanted to prove myself otherwise. I wanted to see if I could swim longer. And so Alex had even asked me, like, when are we going to do Lake Norman? Because I had mentioned it over drinks one night. And he was like, whoa, this is so cool. Look at all the branches. Like, I have no idea how we're going to navigate that, but let's figure it out. Right. Um, I had told him about it after I had swam there in 2023. I'd done a nice 10-hour training swim down there just in the southern part. I remember looking at the whole lake at that time and being like, there's no way anybody could do this. This is such a complicated lake. It like makes my head hurt thinking about trying to plan a length of this. But of course I told Alex about it and he was like, yeah, we could do that. And yeah, but 2024, it didn't happen because I was just kind of looking for like the next greatest thing or the thing to kind of prove myself that I could do longer, stronger. So I looked at Hong Kong Island, which seems like a cool event. And I have family over in mainland China. So I thought it would be good to kind of couple it together. And that really just didn't go as planned with weather and logistics. And I probably should have been given more of a window than just one day.
So I remember getting an email from you when you're in the planning stage of kind of like, here's what I'm thinking. And I think at that time you were interested in seeing if you could swim in the lake for over 24 hours. And that's a different type of goal, I think, than most swimmers have. I think most swimmers are kind of like, I really want to go from point A to point B. And if it takes however long it takes. So like if it's a really large number of miles, it's probably going to take more than 24 hours. But, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and why that, at least at that point, was kind of something on your mind and was interesting or attractive to you.
Yeah. So I think up to this point, and I still feel this way, I guess. I think that notwithstanding something out of my control, I usually feel like I could keep going physically. And so even I think I had said it at Staten Island, at one point they did think it could be over a 20-hour swim if currents just weren't right. And so I had it in my head I was going to do a 20-hour swim and then eventually I could see if I could get that long. It just sounds like a fun goal. I think the danger in that then becomes like when is it enough? But it was just something I had out there floating in my head. I think similar to what I've said before, if it doesn't make me feel a little bit crazy, then I'm less likely to want to try to do it. And I want to see what happens whenever I get up to that amount of swimming. So I had looked at trying to do this for Lake Norman, and I initially had been spending a lot of quality time with the Google Maps measure distance tool. And I had a lot of really sad times whenever the whole thing crashed and I had like 100 data points in there to try to get it to then like, fix it. I think when I first emailed you, I had really just kind of been like, willy-nilly, like putting them there just to get an idea, knowing that it wasn't going to be the final. But I think when I started to tighten them up, I realized I don't even know if I have enough lake to do this unless I turn around and do a double, which also I don't think was in the cards at that time because I just like mentally was not thinking that that would be the solution to be able to get 24 hours in. So I had the true length, I guess, which is about 26.5 miles of Lake Norman. And then I had this bonus segment I created. There were actually a couple of different places I could have landed. Actually, I can't remember exactly. I think there was maybe one that was 10 miles in and maybe one that was 12. And then you could do some crazy stuff to go around an island to do more. But I think even like the longest one I had planned, I think with the pace I was going, I probably would have ended up maybe a little bit shy of 24, at which point I would have just, swam around.
So we'll pull up a map of Lake Norman on the YouTube version of this, just so people can see all the little nooks and crannies of this lake, and also the challenge of kind of measuring any swim in a body of water that looks like this. And motivated in part by our experience of working with you on creating a route for this lake, and several of my own experiences dealing with Google Maps crashing. I created this new tool that's in the MSF member portal now that has the functionality of Google Maps, but it's designed for exactly this purpose. And it actually saves each latitude, longitude coordinate that you click. It saves it to your account, and so you can map out a route and save it, and it's in your account, and then you can share it with somebody. So like, say you created this, and then you can share it with us and say, does this look right? And then we can go in there and adjust points if necessary. So we have this new feature of the member portal that will hopefully make this whole process a lot easier.
And then the other part that was interesting about that is, like Evan was saying, it's really challenging to make a route in a lake like that, and particularly when it's a reservoir, because if it's, if there's a lot of water in it, then that means that the points are less exposed, right? Like, as the waters come up, versus if it's really low, the points are more exposed and more of them are exposed. It's like longer. You got to go all the way around.
So if the satellite photo was taken 2 years ago, and that's what we're measuring the route on, and then the water level is 2 feet higher when you actually do the swim, like, I don't know that there is a way to really to deal with that, but we try to get as close as we can.
Is your so is this taken like off of Google Maps, or do you use like which satellites, I guess? It sounds like such a cool project.
So the route tool in the member portal uses Mapbox maps, and I don't actually have an answer to the question about comparing satellite photos of Mapbox to Google Maps, but Mapbox is a pretty high-end map tile service, so I think it's probably as current as is commercially available. But I don't have a specific answer to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine like all that must go into having done that, because it did cross my mind as I was doing Google Maps. I'm like, you would think that you could probably create a software for this that's better, or like I was trying to look and see if there was a way to export all of the like GPS points off of something.
Yeah, so there are similar running tools. The problem is that they're mainly focused on use cases that are on land, and the differences in measuring distances along open water are subtly different. And so I've tried a few of those, and it just didn't quite get at what I was trying to do. So I just thought it'd be easier to make my own. But anyway, I haven't announced it or anything, but it's in there, and some people have started messing around with it.
So you had your main route from the bridge to the boat ramp, and then you had your bonus route, or bonus segment, I guess. Yeah. And the idea was, maybe you can just keep going and see what happens, but you won't have to stop too early. Like, you want to have that experience that I think, so in our last episode, we interviewed Karina Garcia, and she was imagining a 20-hour swim, but it only took like 14 hours. So she was left with that, oh, I could have gone further type feeling. And so I think if you have a bonus segment, you can avoid that experience, which you did. Anyway, we should get to that. But first, I'm really curious about your crew. So you said in your narrative that actually organizing the crew was the easiest part of organizing it, and you put together just a really nice group. So maybe you could say who was there and what some of the characteristics of them are that made them a really good support team.
Yeah, so I really had my all-star crew for Lake Norman. It was just the best. So I had Alex of New York Open Water, who is just an all-star kayaker and a good friend of mine, and has just been so supportive throughout the years. And he actually kayaked for my very first ever official marathon swim when I did stage 3. So, full circle moment. He took me around Staten Island as well. So I was really happy to have him come to North Carolina with me for that. And then I had John Hughes, who I have known for a few years just through, actually met him up at the Kingdom Swim at Vermont, and he's kayaked for me at SCAR in 2022, and also is going to this year. And he's just such a great guy to be around. He has just endless bounds of energy. He's that kind of guy that, like, if you're sneaking a peek at the boat and he's on the and he'll like make dumb faces or just do anything to like try to get a reaction. He's just, yeah, like absolutely the energy life of the party and also super experienced. And then I also had Janine Sorrell, who's a great friend of mine. She's also very, very organized, and she's just been around the sport so much. And she does live closer than the others. So she's down in like close to Greenville, South Carolina. So this was a couple hours drive for her to come up. And I had been telling her about this swim because I made it down to North Carolina 2 other times that past year.
So the other question I hear a lot from people who are organizing their first swim is, how do you rent a boat or how do you get a boat? What was your boat process?
Okay, so actually, very important, my husband, Yan Fu. So in relation to the boat, Jan has become a very good boat pilot due to peer pressure from just me, but he says he likes it. So, and he knows what he married. So at this point, that is now his fate. But anyway, so Jan was instrumental in helping us get the boat. So I had been looking up and down all along the coast of the river or the lake for places that would rent boats. And I was looking at waivers to find about any place that would let me operate it at night. And I don't know, maybe the company is going to hear me say this, but I basically adopted don't ask, don't tell. It didn't say that I couldn't operate it at night, and a lot of them did for multi-day rentals. So I found a boat company and we got 2 boats and we rented them, got a house on the shore of Lake Norman. So it was super easy to just have access to the boat. I think, obviously for safety reasons, we let like the police know that this was happening, but we figured it would be better don't ask, don't tell, because I think you all are probably pretty familiar with the idea that you tell somebody you're going to do this and they're like, you're going to do what? And then at that point, I don't know, too many questions. I feel like I get these rapid fire questions all the time if I ever bring up marathon swimming in my regular life and nobody gets it. But long story short, we ended up with 2 boats. Jan has a lot of experience with boating, routing, as does Alex, as does John, as does Janine. So we felt pretty comfortable with our boat crew. We also had a backup boat in case something happened.
And these are pontoon boats, right?
Pontoon boats, yes.
Yeah, I like swimming next to a pontoon boat. It's like it goes your speed and everybody looks so comfortable on those couches and they like kind of relax. I don't know. Seems like a nice
Yeah.
for a
As long
lake
as
at
there's
least.
not waves.
Yeah, as long as there's not waves. So I'm watching your swim on Facebook and Janine's like posting updates and other people are posting updates and stuff. And I think it was like in the evening, right? So you started around 5 p.m. and you were like, I want the darkness or something. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I was
Yeah,
like, this is so cool. This is just so cool.
I love night swimming. It's just so much more peaceful. I was like kind of grumpy starting out on the swim. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm about to start a really long swim, it's not that I don't want to do it, but it's like the moment you've been waiting for so long and it starts and you're like, so it's like this. Like I think the worst part is like the first half an hour of a swim. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate with that. So you were grumpy at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then you were just like, I want the darkness, and then you wanted it to settle down and just be peaceful. Was it peaceful other than the jet skiers?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was such great night swimming. I really was having so much fun. The moon was a little bit blocked. So it was a harvest super moon. And we had seen it like the day before, right before it was very full and like on the deck of our Airbnb, and it was beautiful. So I was really, really excited, and I tried not to be too disappointed when it was hiding behind some clouds, but the clouds looked really cool and there was enough like ambient light around everything that you could still see pretty cool shadows and stuff. And overall it was still pretty calm. So I was really enjoying it still.
It, yeah, I like the part that you wrote about the houses and the lights on shore, and it just sounded so cozy. Um, like I think actually For fun, we should just read that part because you're a good writer too.
Oh,
I
thank
liked
you.
reading. Yeah, I liked reading your narrative. It was descriptive. It sounds like you could see the steam coming up from the nuclear power plant pipes in the moonlight and other ambient light. You wrote it was an eerie, translucent color. I really like that. Can you say a little bit more about that? So there's a nuclear power plant there, and the steam was coming up.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a lot of like where Homer Simpson works, like in The Simpsons. But then I think with the light and the steam, it was just so eerie looking. Like it felt very much like Halloween. And then I got a little bit confused because there was a few smokestacks and I swam by one. And then I saw the other one, and then I was like, Alex, have we been stuck in one place? And he goes, no, it's another one.
I mean, that's pretty unique. I don't think I've read about another swim happening where you're gauging your progress by the nuclear power plant steam stacks that you're passing. Okay, I'm going to read the other part now. Once it was fully dark, I settled down and I began to enjoy everything more. Shoreline lights shimmered from big lakeside houses. The moon pushed through the clouds in brief flashes, and everything felt calm as we were the only people out there, with the exception of one strange cluster of people on jet skis around midnight, on a Tuesday, no less. Yeah. Um
Delinquents.
yeah. I understand from reading the narrative that the main limiting factor of the swim actually ended up being the heat. Like you were actually like feeling pretty good physically, like arm wise, soreness wise, all that stuff. But can you tell us when did you start noticing that you were that the heat was really going to be a problem?
So it was still dark whenever I noticed. I think if I had to pinpoint a time, maybe like 3 a.m. or so.
We should also
So
probably tell them how hot was it? Like
it was
what
like
was the water temperature?
82.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Around the time that the sun was rising, I was starting to get really hot and just uncomfortable and starting to anticipate that I was going to try to do this turn for the bonus segment that I was going to do. I knew no matter what, like I wanted to just mentally make the turn. So I was kind of grumpy as the sun was rising because I was starting to get into the part of the lake that I was a little bit more familiar with, and it felt longer than I remembered. That's also just the danger of doing routes that you sort of know. I don't know about you, but I feel like every time I repeat a swim, I never quite remember it the right way. And then I get a little bit disappointed or like annoyed when it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it was sunrise. I was pretty hot. I was telling them like, "Hey, I'm kind of hot. It'd be really nice. I'm really looking forward to this turn so I can reset a little bit. Also, I have like a chafing thing." And then Janine makes a comment about it being warm, and then I asked how what the temperature was, and then she was like, "You don't want to know." And then I kind of pressured them, and then they told me, and then I was like, "Well, it sort of figures because I can tell I'm getting pretty hot." I wasn't overwhelmingly hot at that point. I just felt toasty. Was trying to take in a lot of fluids. It's kinda like whenever you do a long workout in a pool that's just a little bit too hot. It's like, "This really sucks, but I can probably keep going. Like, it's fine. Like, not ideal, but I'm just gonna keep going
You
because
get
I
kind
need
of a
to."
weird feeling though, right? Like a weird uh, weird, slightly overheated feeling.
Yeah, like, kinda
Like,
headachy.
yeah. Was that some of the first stuff that you noticed, like physically, symptom wise?
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
pretty headachy. I ended up getting to the end of the length and I got out and I was very overwhelmed. I had been kind of swimming faster to just get out of the heat, which in retrospect probably was like not the smartest idea. I read about it on my narrative, but I still think it's funny when I think about it. I basically like got out and then Janine, her ever prepared self, had so many snacks for me and she's like going through them and I can't hear anything she's saying. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to pee. And I also can't sit down because I have zinc on my ass and I can't get back in because then it starts again. And so I was just like, please don't judge me. I'm just gonna pee here and then I can eat my snacks. Like I can't I can't think. So I don't know. For anybody trying to execute a multi-segment swim, remember that.
Pee
Remember to
before you
pee.
get out.
Yeah, that was really just uncomfortable and really threw me off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I stopped and I really just wanted to have at least a little bit of a mental reset and a chance to chug some water, which I did, but I didn't really linger. I was ready to get back in and go, but it kind of felt like I was walking into soup. Like, it was surprising how, like, quickly I could not that it's not that it's hard to get back in the water, but, if it's even a little bit chillier or, like, you
Yeah.
you go from, like, air to water, you feel that chill or you feel that difference, but this was just, like, soupy. Um, I got back in and I just thought, like, I don't think I can keep going with this heat, so I started to then strategize, and I was able to slow myself down to a pace. I think I was, like, around 2.8, 2.9, and I was like, I know how fast I need to swim to go 2.5. And so I was able to nail it. My crew got a little concerned. They're like, "You're going slower." And I'm like, "No, this is intentional. I know that this is my stroke rate and this is the distance that I'm covering right now." And they said, "Okay, wow, that's impressive." I was
I was
like,
going to say that does show a remarkable amount of self-awareness for especially when you've been swimming that long, that you were still able to know exactly what that would feel like. I think that only comes with like a lot of practice and experience.
yeah, definitely. I think, over the years, I've really been able to nail it. And my stroke rate, I'm a very like long, strong swimmer. I'm, 49, 51, not any quicker than that really ever. But yeah, I knew I needed to slow down if I wanted to have a chance of surviving in the heat. And it worked for a while, but I just reached a point where I got so headachy and the sun came up, and because at this point the sun wasn't even a factor and I was still overheated. And as soon as the sun hit me, I I just knew that I wasn't gonna have a fun time if I kept going, and I started to think about, like, okay, if I were to just, like, if I started to feel lightheaded or wanted to pass out, could I flip over on my back really quick? Like, how would that work? There was a dog barking at me, and I actually,
Yeah.
like, didn't even notice it was barking at me until John pointed it out. But I was, like, seeing it happen and not, like, registering that it was happening. And then at one point and at that point, I was just like, "Okay." I tried to chug some more cold water, and I eventually was just like, "Guys, is there a shorter bonus route I could do?" And they said, "You could go here, but it's not even a 10K," which brings me to another question I do have for you all. If you do, like, a long segment, and then you are so tired and you tap out and you're like, "I can only do 4 miles." Do that 4 miles count?
I don't see why not.
Well, I think there might be a rule that each segment has to be over 10K.
I think the spirit of what Jessica may have been thinking of is that I've uh like I've said no to people who want to go in like a 2 mile wide lake and swim across a 2 mile wide lake 50 times or something. And they're like, no, that's but if it's the last, I feel like if it's the last segment of the swim, or if it's like you have like a complex route and 1 out of 5 segments is less than 10K, then I don't really see an issue with that. We're just trying to avoid the situation where they're going in a little pond and swimming across it 100 times or something.
Yeah,
Cool.
that
I
makes
hope that
sense.
helps someone. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope so too.
I mean, I still don't have any regrets. I think I should have gotten out at the time I got out. There was like a boat ramp, like maybe a mile and a half from where I was. I told my crew I was just really not doing well with the heat and getting nervous. And at one point, like my sternum right here was also getting cramped and it hurt when I was breathing. And I was just like, I don't know if this is like a more serious thing, like if it could actually be like heart related because I'm freaking out with all the heat. And I just said, look, I think I don't know. I don't know if I can make it to the bonus segment. And they didn't really question me. They made me swim a little longer to get to like 30 miles on the dot. And yeah, it was disappointing, but I think overall I was really still happy to have done the swim, and I know I can push further. I know I can go further. I didn't really feel a lot of strain muscularly, and I recovered pretty quickly with from that regard. But yeah, the I did not feel like a normal person for a couple days, and was definitely pretty dehydrated, and I was having trouble eating after as well. So
Yeah, that sounds like the right decision at the right time. So what role did the crew play in, like you said that they were kind of like, yeah, just go a little further and then you can get to 30, the 30-mile marker. But like did they, I think it could be a difficult thing for crew to know, is this a time that I should kind of coax her onward, or is this a time that I should actually kind of help her come to terms with like the swim should be over. I just think that's an interesting skill set for crew members. And I think you had really experienced crews, so I'm kind of curious how they got their heads around that.
Yeah, I think maybe even though I had told them like, "Hey, I'm swimming 2.5K and my stroke rate is," I don't know what I had said, like 45, it's like much slower. They were also impressed and were okay with it, but I think they also knew like I must have been hurting. And I also think that that's a group of people that see me do a lot of really stupid, insane things. Like, I don't know, swimming through an injury or swimming topless, or I don't know, you can name a lot of other instances. And so I think for the most part, when I've had to call a swim, I don't get questioned. I mean, I don't have a huge data set to take from, but I don't think I wish my crew had pushed me further, but I was a little surprised that they were just like, "Okay." But I think it's probably because I was a little bit out of it at a couple of other times as well, is what they said.
That makes sense. Like they know you well, so that's one factor. They know that you're the type of swimmer who doesn't just back off at the first sign of trouble, so that's maybe a second thing. And so if you're saying, "Hey, I think I might be done," they're taking that and going, "Okay, if Leslie says she's done, she's probably done." You know, like that. And then the fourth factor being what you said, that you were kind of out of it and a little bit more spacey than usual. Maybe that was the fourth thing.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line too. I think I also am the type of person, it hasn't happened yet, but I feel like I would be that person that's gonna just keep going till someone drags me out, and I don't wanna be in that situation, like, that's not a smart thing to do, but I think I don't know, and growing up in club swimming, competitive sports, right, I think a lot of the times it's almost not expected, but it's like that's like the thing that you should do, you're just pushing through no matter what, and I think as adults and as people that are experienced in the sport and can recognize the dangers, I think the longer I do this, the more scared I get.
Same,
Yeah.
same. At the beginning, I was like, "Oh, yeah, whatever."
Yes.
Now I'm like, "Whoa."
I think it's far more common that people don't get anywhere near the point where they have to be dragged out of the water. I think that's kind of part of the interesting challenges is like how close actually are you to that point? And personally, I've never been anywhere close to that. I think I've felt like swims are hard, but like I don't think I've ever experienced being so close to having to be physically removed from the water because I'm not capable of it myself or I'm about to drown or something. But and I think that's probably more common than not. That people are just
Yeah.
they haven't gotten to that edge really or experienced that.
Yeah, there's something in this is a theory, it's contested, but a theory called the central governor theory, which is basically that you have almost like, school buses have a governor. They won't let school buses go over like 55 miles per hour. Your brain or your not you, like when you think of you, but like deep in your central nervous system is a governor that actually sort of monitors what's going on. And let's say you get to 50% of your capacity. Your central governor comes in and hammers you with all kinds of symptoms, fatigue, crazy stuff so that you will stop and save your life. But through training, that threshold where the central governor comes in and shuts you down goes up. So training is kind of like teaching your central nervous system that what you're doing is safe. There's a great book about this by Alex Hutchinson, who writes for Outside Magazine, but it's called Endure. But basically, there's all kinds of data supporting essentially that we don't get anywhere near our capacities because our central governor comes in and gives us all kinds of crazy limiting factors. So it's a good idea to push yourself, but it's also okay to come back another day and find out, okay, I survived that. It took me a few days to recover, but I was okay. And then now your central governor knows I survived. It was kind of fun. Let's do it again. Of course, the heat is another story. And for you, where it sounds like you have had some experiences passing out, it was probably really good to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually reminded me a little bit of, like, growing up in Charlotte, and when I first started competitive swimming, it would be in the summer months, and we'd do crazy, like, running dry land outside. I have, like, multiple passing out stories
Oh, God.
of, like, going
Really?
in there. Yeah.
Oh
It
man.
was so rough. I don't see, I mean, Charlotte's not even that far south, and that was brutal. So it's like heat
Wow.
heat's struggling. It's hard.
Yeah, and I think heat is actually really, really dangerous. Like I think cold is dangerous, but I think heat's like even more dangerous. I just think that I was thinking about why do we not have as many people in marathon swimming challenging themselves in heat as we do with challenging themselves in cold. And I realize it's because, you know, there's not really bodies of water that are always way too hot to swim in. There's plenty of bodies of water that are way too cold to swim in or just at the right point of challenge to swim in. But, even in Florida, you could go to Florida in the summer and that would be way too hot, but to swim in for any serious length of time. But you could just go to the same spot in the winter and do the route then or the spring or whatever. So like I don't think we have a need to really like challenge ourselves in 90-degree water or something like that, or even 85-degree water. Just come back when it's cooler. All right, Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today. To everyone out there listening, we hope you've enjoyed the episode. We'd love to know what you thought. You can learn more about the Marathon Swimmers Federation and our other projects at ultraswimming.org, or follow us on social media, Marathon Swimmers Federation on Facebook or ultra_swimming on Instagram. We wish you well on your next swim, wherever that may be. See you next time.